Hi, I'm Jerry Jampolsky,
And I'm Diane Cirincione.
and we're sitting here in our houseboat where we live in Sausalito, California, which is just, about 5 miles from San Francisco?
Just north of San Francisco. And we'd like to welcome everyone to the conference, the 8th anniversary at CECURA Monterrey. And we're with you in spirit today, even though we're not physically there in our bodies.
I'd like to tell you a few things about how the center began, for those of you who are not familiar with that story. It was in 1975, and I had recently become a student of A Course in Miracles, and I was making rounds at University of California Hospital, where I was assistant clinical professor, and I was making rounds with an oncologist, and a 7-year-old boy who had serious cancer asked the oncologist, "What is it like to die?" And the oncologist obviously became fearful. He changed the subject, asked about his bowel movements, and didn't answer the question. So I decided to look around and find out, well, how do kids really communicate? Who do they find to talk to? And found out oftentimes it's the cleaning lady who's mopping up the floor in the morning. And the next day I had some guidance to start a center that these children would be like wise spirits in young bodies, teaching me and other people another way of looking at the world, another way of healing. And we started with just 9 children, and we used the principles, the 12 principles of attitudinal healing that CECURA uses also around, they're used all over the world, were really principles that I doused from the Course in Miracles. And all of our services are free, and we began just with children, and then with siblings, and then we began to branch out. You want to share a little bit what some of the things that our center in Sausalito has done and other places?
Well, the original center began working with individuals, with adults with life-threatening illnesses and AIDS, cancers, etc. And then our largest program came about, the person-to-person program, where individuals who don't have life-threatening illnesses or even large life challenges who wanted to learn to use these principles in their lives, the principles of attitudinal healing. That became one of our biggest programs. And then other centers began to form doing the same work. They're all independent and they're all over the world. Some of the more recent centers are opening in, most recent one is in Nigeria and Africa, and in Cameroon, Africa, and in Central Africa, and also in Mongolia.
Mongolia. And there are centers in such places as Japan. There are 4 centers there, in Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, Switzerland, Russia.
I think what's important is that each center culturally adapts these principles to using them in the way that they want. Some people work with life-threatening illnesses, but as you know, many people use them in their communities and with organizations getting better, with families healing, helping with interpersonal relationships.
Yes. Oftentimes one person starts it, has a fire in them, and all of a sudden that attracts other people. And Maruja, who I think is there today with you, started the first center in Mexico City, and now it's just spread like a firefly all over the place.
Yes, and we're excited to share with you too that just about the time that you'll be seeing this video, the new attitudinalhealinginternational.org website is now up.
When you say that slowly?
Yes, www.attitudinalhealinginternational.org. Or you can go to attitudinalhealing.com. And it is a web platform for all of the centers to be joining on, groups, individuals, sharing your programs, sharing your curriculums. So it is an online community for attitudinal healing, and we're very excited about it. So please join us on there.
The aspect of attitudinal healing is that we're here to be helpful to other people, to have a consciousness of giving rather than trying to get things from other people. And it's about learning the value of forgiveness, of letting go of the past, and letting go of our judgments, and letting go of our grievances. And when we're living in the present, not the past, and we're not interpreting people's behavior, and we're not attached to victimhood, and we believe anything is possible, we begin to choose to experience what our natural inheritance was, which is a sense of happiness, a sense of peace, a sense of not taking ourselves too seriously, a sense of that each day, no matter what is put on our plate, we can choose to be happy.
I think one of the most important things to remember about attitudinal healing, which I'm sure you try to remind yourselves of each day, and us also, Jerry, is that we come to attitudinal healing and we use the principles of attitudinal healing in order to actually to heal our own hearts and heal our own minds. And that's the number one premise. Because if we think that it's about somebody else that we're going to be healing, then it usually doesn't work. But as we heal our own minds, the world around us heals. Because as we perceive, so we see. And as we think, so we see. And as we heal our own minds, so we see a healed world around us. Not using any form of denial. There's no denial here. It's looking straight at what's happening. And then making the choice to choose love over fear, peace over conflict, and to really teach only love, because that is who we are.
Although we started as a medical model, as a way of finding a sense of peace no matter what is happening to us, what has happened today with the financial crises and people losing their jobs and losing what they thought was they had saved for the future, is that these principles are more important than ever, because we can choose not to come from scarcity and come from the power of abundance of love within our plate, within our hearts, and to recognize that our reason for being here on earth is really to look past the darkness and to choose to see the light in each other. There's a one-liner in one of the books we wrote called A Mini Course for Life that says, "Your light is all that I see, and it's but a reflection of the light in me."
That reminds me of the first principle of attitudinal healing. And Jerry and I often joke and say, if we really, really got that first principle, we probably wouldn't need the next 11. And that is remembering that the essence of our being is love. And if I can remember that about myself, then I can remember it about someone else.
One of the principles of attitudinal healing is that we're all equal teachers and students to each other. And one story I'd like to share with you was, maybe it was about 1976, there was an 11-year-old child named Greg Harrison. And he had had maybe 12 different times chemotherapy for his cancer, and with terrible, terrible side effects. And he'd gotten sick again. They were going to think of trialing another drug, and he didn't want any more drugs. And he went to his parents, and parents talked to the doctor, and they agreed that there'd be no more drugs. And at the next meeting, the group meeting, mostly 10, 11-year-old kids were there with one form of cancer, many of them bald from chemotherapy. And one of the kids said to Greg, "Well, what's it like to know that you might be dead in 2 weeks?" And while I was trying to figure what I might say, Greg just started to talk in a very quiet way, saying, "Well, I think when you die, what happens is you just discard your body, which was never real in the first place. And then you're at one with all souls. And sometimes you come back and act as a guardian angel to someone." And there's absolutely no question in my mind that Greg continues to be a guardian angel to me. And what he taught me and everyone else that day was, we're not just these bodies. We're light beings that are only temporary in these bodies.
Jerry, we have so many teachers that are wise souls in little bodies in our lives. And for a minute, I'd like to just touch on the second principle for attitudinal healing. Not that we're going to go through them, but I think it's important because this one is so profound in the professional world, the medical world, as well as our own personal lives. And that is that we define health a little differently than the medical model. Jerry's a psychiatrist, I'm a psychologist. We understand the definitions of health in medicine, etc. But attitudinal healing, we define health as inner peace and healing as the letting go of fear. Which means that if I am healthy, that I have let go of the fears in my life, all of which come down to the fear of love and the fear of separation. All fears have one common denominator, and that is the fear of separation from something or someone. And as I deal with that, I make way for the love. And that healing being the letting go of fear, I see health as a way to access my own inner peace. And when I'm not feeling inner peace and giving that peace away to others, there is some part of me that is unhealthy. And that's the part of the mind that attitudinal healing attempts to heal. Our goal is not to heal bodies, although we have to say a lot of bodies heal. That is not the goal at all. The goal is to heal our minds. And maybe you'd like to add something to that, Jerry.
Well, our first prayer in the morning is, I'm not a body, I am free, for I'm still as God created me.
And I want the peace of God. Today, the peace of God is everything that I want.
The aim of all my living here and the end that I seek.
It is my purpose, my function, and my life, while I abide where I'm not at home.
Well, what that helps us do is put the ego aside and try to listen to the voice of God talk through us, our inner voice, the inner voice of love, whatever would you like to call that. And we believe that you make decisions either based on fear or based on love. And most of us are dealing with our egos, so we tend to look at the past and make a lot of decisions in our life that are based on fear. But we think the wisest decisions are made when we quiet our mind, still our mind. I like the old Indian statement that a busy mind is a sick mind, a slow mind is a healthy mind, and a still mind is a divine mind. So a lot of what attitudinal healing is retraining the mind. Retraining the mind to have the purity of love and kindness. And rather than having a to-do list in the morning, to have a to-be list. And what a to-be list for Diane and I are, to wake up in the morning and say, to remind ourselves that we are the essence of love. We're unconditional love. We're kindness. We're gentleness. We're forgiving. We're people who don't hold on to grievances. And this sets the world and the day just entirely different, you know. And when we make forgiveness as important as breathing, then all that stress that we thought we had begins to disappear.
It does. Jerry and I are married, and we have been together almost 30 years, and I can't imagine a week or even a day going by that we don't have some reason to use forgiveness, even if it's just the smallest ways. And that forgiveness really, really is the greatest healer of all. And the fact that we can access it. Sometimes we do workshops in forgiveness often, and people will sometimes say, oh, but it seems so hard to forgive. And it may feel like it's hard to forgive, but it feels like it's a lot harder not to forgive. One of the definitions of forgiveness that we like, that someone gave us years ago, she said, her definition of forgiveness is that forgiveness is giving up all hopes for a better past. That means it's not going to change no matter how much you moan and groan about the past. But what you can do is you can change your perception of the past and heal that. As long as we think that we are caught in the past, we will always feel like a victim. That what someone did or said or didn't do made us feel like a victim. I mean, we were victims at the time of what happened. Makes us still feel like a victim. But with forgiveness, we realize, and with attitudinal healing, we realize that I can actually heal my own mind, because what is the past except what remains in the experience of my perception? And I can heal that because it's my mind, it's my thoughts, it's my grievances, it's my attitudes. And that's very, very, very powerful, because literally it changes your life, and as your life changes, the lives change around you. And as your view of the world changes, as my view of the world changes, the world I see out there changes around me.
I think oftentimes we spent a fair amount of time in Hawaii, and they like to talk story. And I think a lot of times we can get healed by hearing other people's stories. And there's a story that I'd like to share that occurred some years ago when Diane's great nephew was 4.5 years old, and we're walking down the countryside. And he was in no hurry. He was very curious, and he all of a sudden picked up a weed. He looked at the weed and very carefully, and he felt it against his face. And then he came up to both of us and said, "Isn't this the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life?"
And Jerry and I looked at each other and went, at that moment, it really was the most beautiful thing we'd ever seen. A little nameless weed flower. And he saw beauty in everything. And he opened our eyes to see differently.
So if we'll remind ourselves that children can really help us see what our real spiritual selves are, that we can choose to see, instead of the negativity, instead of the awful things that seem to happen, we can always look and see the light in everybody. And we begin to see that what we see in other people is only a projection of something in ourselves. So we come back once again, and when we learn to see really the true value of forgiveness and let go of the angry past, what happens is we begin to see the light in ourselves and spread that light around so the darkness can disappear. So in one of our books, in Mini Course for Life, we wrote, "Your light is all that I see, and is but a reflection of the light in me." And this is what attitude healing allows us to do, to see a non-physical world where there's no gender, no bodies, but there's only love that unfolds upon itself and continues to expand.
Probably one of the most powerful tools we have in attitudinal healing is the gift that we are given as human beings, and that is free will. It's the ability and the choices that we have, the ability to choose and to see differently. So that power of choice is one of the principles that is so important for me in my life, is that I can choose to see another person as either loving or that they're fearful, giving a call of help for love. That's a choice. So if I see someone being really mean, really unkind towards me, towards anyone else, the awful things that I see in the world, I can, and they're all defined by anger, rage, violence, bigotry, all the horrible things that we do to ourselves and each other. Well, that comes under fear. And so if I'm not experiencing love, I'm experiencing fear. And if, as I see someone else, I can either see them as loving, and if they're not acting lovingly, then I can choose to see them as fearful, giving a call of help. Well, there's a difference when I look and see, or you look and see, someone as attacking you versus someone who is fearful and they're giving a call of help. Because I don't think too many of us have attacked people that were asking for help. They were giving a call of help. We haven't attacked too many people that we see as fearful. And so we have the choice to change the way we perceive the situation, and therefore it calls forth from us a different reaction. So that principle is so powerful, I feel, that I can choose to see another person as either loving or that they're fearful, giving us a call of help for love. It's all about choice.
Not too long ago, Diane and I were asked to give a talk at a state mental hospital in Hawaii. And it turned out that part of the audience was patients and part of the audience was staff. And they're all dressed how?
Well, they're all dressed